Hi, my name's Sarika and you're listening to Vocally Annotated. Welcome to the very first episode of this podcast. I don't really know how to go from here, what would be a useful introduction, so I'm going to explain the meaning of the name Vocally Annotated. So, a couple of years ago, when I started dating my partner, we started dating in the autumn, and Christmas was shortly after. So he asked me, we don't really know each other that well, so he asked me what I wanted for Christmas. And I told him, I want you to annotate your favourite book and give me that for Christmas, because I think that's both the most romantic and the sluttiest gift you can give someone in a relationship. I fucking love it. So he did, and he gave me this, and this is On the Shortness of Life by Seneca. So the only brief was annotate it, right? Not only did he annotate it, he also stuck QR codes in here, and those QR codes link to voice notes he's recorded for various parts, for the chapters, sections, I don't know what they're called, but like for each chapter there's a QR code next to the beginning of it where he's giving his overall thoughts on that chapter and what Seneca's saying, and then throughout he'll highlight specific bits and he's underlined them and annotated them like a regular book. And I was like, not only is this genius, this is incredible, and I love it so much. And in the QR code for the first chapter, he says something along the lines of, I've never vocally annotated a book before, but I guess I'm giving it a go. And so that is where the name of this podcast comes from. I think he really knocked it out of the park for a first Christmas. And I love the idea of using this podcast to vocally annotate my life in a way. At the time of recording this, I've just had a birthday, so yay me. And I have really truly accepted that I've moved from mid-20s to late 20s. Up until like 6 months ago even, if you had said, oh, you're considered late 20s now, I would have said, no way, I'm still mid-20s, I reject being called late 20s. But I don't know, it just feels right now. Like by the time my birthday actually did roll around, I was like, no, you know what, I'm into this. And one of the things I'd set as a resolution from my last birthday was to do things that scared me. And so, I guess it took a while, but I'm finally getting around to doing this, and this is really cool. I mean, I've been podcasting for a couple of years now. I do a podcast with my best friend. It's called Dial Up Book Club. It'll be in the description or show notes, that's one. And that's really fun to do together. That really just feels like us riffing on whatever the topic of the week is. But it's 2024 and we haven't released a single episode this year because like life just got in the way. And I've been missing it. I wanted to fulfill that creative void, and so that's why I'm here starting my own one. And I guess the timing feels right for me too, in the sense that, along with feeling like I'm ready to move into being in my late 20s, I'm overhauling different things in my life. And I don't mean like major overhauls, but I'm making the tweaks as I'm finally starting to settle into, the things that I actually like I feel more secure in my personal style, for instance. I mean, perfume. Since the beginning of the week, I've just been reading about perfume so much because mine has suddenly started smelling like ass on me. It's not actually that sudden. It's been a while. I just didn't realise how bad it was. And I guess I was in denial. Because, again, like, the renewal of being another year older. So, in that respect, this year's going well. And I'm enjoying it so far. I will just address the elephant in the room. I'm filming this on the 7th of November, 2024. I'm not going to say more than that, because I don't want to. There will be enough of a historical record for people to look through and to remember this date, or like yesterday, I guess. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. This party I went to on Saturday night, and it was a kind of belated birthday / Halloween party, and I ran into a bunch of people there. Basically, there were a lot of people there that I went to school with that I hadn't seen in over 10 years, some of them. And so that was kind of freaky and also just interesting to, see how people are doing, what people have been up to, kind of thing. And by later in the night, there had come a point where everyone was really drunk. I wasn't drinking that much at this party, but everyone else was pretty drunk. They were all sat on this bed and they were talking about past relationships, and they were saying, you know, my ex was such an important part of my past and I don't want to let go of them, you know, moving on is so difficult, and even if I get with someone else, they're going to need to accept that I'm friends with my ex and they're part of my life. And my partner looked at me like, you look like you wanted to say things at that party. And I was like, I did. I didn't, because I didn't want to get into it. But yeah, I think that's all nonsense. So I'm going to get into it here. Yeah, I think that's a really ridiculous take. It really, it just gives Carrie in season 4 of Sex and the City when Aiden's like, I don't want you to see Big anymore. And she says, I can't not talk to him. He's in my life. Not the same way you are, but he is. I'm like, you cheated on this person in front of you. You cheated on Aiden with this guy, and you're saying like, no, I'm not going to stop talking to him now. I mean, anyway, I think the whole thing is ridiculous. Personally, I think the whole thing is ridiculous. I don't understand this thing of wanting to be friends with your ex. And that's not because I haven't tried it. I did, and it didn't go well, which is why I'm now saying that I don't understand it at all. Like I said, I'm in my late 20s now. So all these people who were there were also in their late 20s. We were in the same class at school. So at your big age, if you've been in multiple relationships, how have you not figured out that this is not a good strategy? First of all, to have just broken up with someone and you want to be friends with them, or even if you've been broken up for, let's say, a couple of years, but you went out for a while and you're now able to tell me things about their new partner, like, how much have you really moved on? So one thing that happened recently was Diwali, which is great. Belated happy Diwali to anyone who celebrated. And I saw, yet again, the resurgence of people being like, NRIs dress like shit. NRIs have no taste. Why do they do this? I saw a YouTube short of this woman who was showing her Diwali outfit, and the comments were just full of people bashing her, and I was like, why? She looks good. And they were like, her bindi is too big. It's giving Komolika in the 90s and 2000s. No one wears bindis like that anymore. Okay. And then some people said the sari was too plain. Some people said that the sari looked like she worked in an office or something. And she said in the video that it was her late grandmother's sari that she was wearing. I don't get it. This whole NRI's dress like shit thing baffles me. As someone who has dedicated the last 5, almost 6 years to really figuring out my personal style and honing my wardrobe, I'm very intentional about what I bring into my wardrobe now. I don't get the hate. From what I can tell, a lot of the hate comes from the fact that NRIs don't follow the trends that are set in India and that regular people in India wear. Right, because they don't live in India. You're complaining about how her bindi looks like it's from the 90s/early 2000s, and people are saying these clothes are out of fashion. You know, they've been out of fashion for 20 years. Like, why do you still wear them? To me, it's indicative of a broader problem I've noticed when I've gone to India, which is that people want to focus on the trends. There's no real sense of like personal style. To have personal style feels so much like it's deviating from the norm. How has it not occurred to anyone that these people you're talking about, these NRIs who grew up outside of India, and they keep dressing like it's the 90s, it's the 2000s. Babe, they dress like that when they're wearing Western clothes as well. This is not new. This is not specifically for Indian clothing. They just dress like that. So it makes sense that they're going to be bringing that style into their Indian clothes when they wear them. What isn't there not to get? I live in London, if you can tell, and I wouldn't say the way I approach my style is mainstream, and it's certainly not mainstream there when there's such an emphasis on like, oh, you have to wear new clothes and you have to look good, you can't be wearing someone else's old torn clothes. And I'm not criticizing that as a mentality. because I understand where it comes from. I understand why, like, parents and grandparents will say these kinds of things. I understand why they don't understand thrifting. I get it. Okay. What I don't, it's a disconnect. And that's what I need people to understand. Because I don't want to say it's driving me cuckoo, because it's not, like, realistically, it's not that deep. But it just does bother me that, yes, it's Indian fashion, but you're talking about NRIs. You're talking about people who don't live in India, but who are of Indian origin, for example. At some point, like, at what point does it become that they are them, right? They're not going, if you're British Indian, then you're British, that is an identity in and of itself. You're not going to be, like, an Indian person transplanted into Britain, especially if you grew up here and you're raised here. The same, what's the word I'm looking for? But the same thing is true if you're Indian American, or if you're Indian Canadian, or if you're from anywhere else. It just doesn't make sense to hold people to the standard instead of letting a unique style evolve for that place and let that culture become its own culture, become a thing. It really bothers me to hear these comments and for people to say, like, oh, you have no style. It's like, you're wearing that thing because it's popular. You're wearing that thing because it's trendy. That doesn't mean you have style. And so why are you criticizing my style? I don't think it's strictly an Indian thing, because there are plenty of people here who will do a Shein haul at the beginning of every season and fill up their wardrobes with the latest trends. But yeah, it doesn't make sense for people to criticize people, especially when people who make, like, fashion content online. That's kind of their thing, and they have a very defined personal style. And if they're wearing Western clothes, then the comments are full of praise and, like, yes, love to see it. Oh, love that you're bringing your Indian heritage into your clothing. As soon as they step into Indian clothes, then it's, this look sucks. This is not trendy. Why do you do this? And it's like, you're saying it's not trendy. That's the point. Not that they don't have style. I mean, I would argue you don't have style if you're just following the latest trends and you're not really thinking about it for yourself. You just buy new thing, wear new thing. And that doesn't really matter who you are, where you're from, what your context is. That applies. If you're wearing something indiscriminately because someone told you it was in season, then why are you sitting around criticizing someone else's style? In Western clothes, I personally like feeling more dressed up. I think it suits me. I don't think being dressed down works for me. Having said that, I do tend to, I think, dress down when it comes to Indian wear. Just because what dressing up means in that context versus what it means in, like, Western wear, to me, in my context, are two different things. And I'm not used to that version of dressed up. I'm not used to it. I don't feel comfortable in it because I don't do it enough. Where am I going to do it? In London, really? But it's also, like, me being rebellious against the idea that, you know, you should wear this because you do this. And it's like, why do you do it? It's because women do it, because women are expected to do it, essentially. It's what they've been socialized to do. And I rebel against that by dressing down slightly, intentionally. Like, if part of the expectation is that you wear makeup to this event, then I don't want to wear makeup. And to me, it's that simple. I don't like the expectation of it. And that's my personal issue with it. That plays into why I would rather be more dressed down. And those are my not very developed thoughts on it. The thing is, when I was thinking about this episode and what I wanted to talk about, as I was thinking about the topics, I was like, oh, I have so much to say on this thing and that thing. I can talk about this. As soon as I get in front of this camera and this mic, nothing. It's just... So I'm doing my best. I'm not used to... I like talking out my thoughts to process them, but I'm not used to doing that without someone to bounce them off of. So I think this will be a short and sweet first episode. Kind of like that. And I'm going to leave it there. And I'll be back next week. And I think that's the most important thing. So if you watched this far, you listened this far, God, if you listened this far, thank you for listening, and see you next week. Take care.